Hello, my name is Hwansan Sunim, and this is Sun Meditation in English. The purpose of this program is to share the Sun or Korean Zen Buddhist teachings of my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, with an international audience. Sun Master Songdam is the most respected meditation master in Korea. Now, for you viewers at home who are watching this program for the first time, you should know that this is a participatory guided meditation program. That means that we'll be learning and applying meditation throughout the course of the program. If you want to follow along at home, what you need to do first is to prepare a meditation mat. Now, if you don't own a meditation mat, what you can do is take a large blanket, fold it into a large square, and sit on that and just follow instruction as the program proceeds. Now, today's topic for contemplation is loneliness. In my conversations with both my Korean friends and my international friends, I've been hearing more and more that loneliness is becoming a serious problem for more and more people. So, statistically speaking, loneliness is on the rise in every society in the world. Every society records increasing levels of loneliness. And this is considered to be a consequence, at least in part, of modernization and urbanization. As traditional community relationships and structures disintegrate, people find themselves in a kind of social void and experience alienation and disorientation. They don't know quite how to reach out to each other in these changing circumstances. So for today's program, in the course of our guided meditation, what we would like to consider is what Sun meditation and Sun Buddhist teachings have to offer in addressing this problem of loneliness. Now, before we get into our discussion of loneliness, what I would like to do is begin our guided meditation. Okay, so we're going to prepare to meditate. So first, I'll ask you to assume the meditation posture. And once again, in assuming the meditation posture, you take your leg, one leg, tuck it in like this, place the other foot on the opposite lap. And if that if you're not flexible enough to do that, you can put it on your calf like this, or on the floor in front of you. That's fine for us beginning meditators. And once you're sitting like that, you want to straighten your back and raise your shoulders up to your ears, roll back and drop. Take your right hand and take the edge of your palm and place it against your lower belly and just let it rest there. Place your left hand on top of your right hand and allow your thumb tips to meet each other in a nice, elegant rainbow shape. Tuck in your chin slightly so that the crown of your head rises, thus lengthening your spine. Okay? And then you want to take the tip of your tongue and place it against the roof of your mouth lightly behind your upper row of teeth. And you want to keep your eyes open and looking straight ahead. So this is a proper seated meditation posture. Next, we engage preparation breathing. In preparation breathing, what we're going to do is inhale as deeply as we can into our chest. Make our chest expand as fully as possible and then hold. Hold our breath until it becomes slightly uncomfortable. And then after it becomes a little bit uncomfortable, we're going to exhale completely through our mouth. And we'll do this 3 times as a means of revitalizing both our body and our mind. So why don't we do this together? Inhale through the nose, hold, and then exhale out of the mouth. Once again, inhale, hold, and then exhale out of the mouth. Once we've completed preparation breathing, we will now engage abdominal breathing, also called belly breathing, which is the main form of breathing used in meditation. In abdominal breathing, what we'll do is inhale. Now, all the breathing is done through the nose. We inhale through the nose, and as we inhale, we extend our lower belly as if the air is going all the way down into our abdomen and filling it. And once our belly feels about 80% full, what we do is we hold for 2 or 3 seconds. And then we exhale through the nose for 3 to 4 seconds and draw in our lower belly as we do so. So why don't we try this all together? Inhale through the nose, hold, and then exhale. Inhale and extend your lower belly. Hold, and then exhale. Now what I'll ask you to do is to continue this form of breathing throughout the course of this program. And this will allow you to enter into more relaxed and more peaceful and more centered states of both mind and body. Now, after we engage abdominal breathing, we now engage correct thought, the third element of sun meditation. Now, the distinctive feature of Korean Buddhist meditation is its use of what is called the hwadu as the object of thought in meditation. A hwadu is a kind of special question that we ask ourselves. Now, there are in the Sun Buddhist canon 1,700 of these hwadus, also called gongans in Korean. But our teacher, Sun Master Songdam, primarily uses the so-called imoko hwadu. Now, imoko is Korean for what is this? Okay? And the way we pronounce that is E, Y-I, muot, M-W-O-T, and then ko, G-O. This means, what is this? What is this that directs my body? What is this that generates my thought? When I make a decision, what is it within me that's making the decision? When someone calls my name, what is it in me that responds instantly? When I feel an emotion, what is it that's feeling that emotion? Okay? The way we conduct this thought in the course of meditation is by coordinating it with our breathing. So once again, we inhale, we hold, then as we exhale, imoko. We make the last syllable very long until the end of our exhalation. Okay? So why don't we all do this together out loud? So inhale, hold, and then together exhale, imoko. The goal of asking ourselves this question, what is this, imoko, is to create a state of doubt, is to create a state of totally urgent questioning. We're going to question, what is this that's asking, what is this? And we're going to try and expand this state of doubt more and more each time we ask the question. Okay? So together, once again, inhale, hold, and then as we exhale, imoko. Now this way of holding our posture, breathing and thinking cleanses and purifies our minds in the cultivation of enlightenment. When this state of doubt completely permeates our body and mind, when we've practiced it so much, we'll feel it as a physical presence. Ultimately, we'll even dream of it. If we go to the logical end, it will fill the entire universe. And finally, this state of doubt is said to erupt, explode like a balloon with too much air in it, in the experience that Buddhists call enlightenment, awakening to the truth and reality of our own existence. So this is the goal of our practice. And I will ask our audience members and all viewers at home who are participating to continue to do this posture, this breathing, and this imoko in the course of this program, and use our clarified awareness to contemplate the issue that we'll be talking about today. So I ask you to meditate as I share with you now some observations on loneliness. The first thing I'd like to do is share with you the story of actually the most lonely person I've ever met. She's a real person, lives in Korea. I'm not going to use her name. I'll just refer to her as Jay. Now, I first met Jay, or actually I first saw her more than 20 years ago. What happened was she came to my home temple and several times and created a big scene. She started screaming and shouting, and she seemed to be having a public breakdown. So she was asked to leave several times, and finally she was asked not to come back ever again. And then after that, the years passed, and about 10 years ago, she suddenly reappeared at the temple. Now, on the day that she happened to arrive, I was the one manning the office. And as she sat in front of me, I noticed that there was something familiar about her. But there was also clearly something a little off. Her gaze was very intense, but also disfocused. Her facial expressions seemed almost fragmented, almost conflicted or contradictory, and there was this air of great anxiety about her. She seemed almost worried that something bad was going to happen or that she herself might do something unpredictable. So, and she was constantly eyeing me with what seemed like suspicion. So I tried to calm her down and win her trust, and eventually I found out that she had actually been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And her main symptoms were auditory hallucinations. She heard voices, and sometimes she got obsessively attached to her thinking, which became very disordered and departed from reality. And so she no longer could distinguish between her thoughts and reality, and would act as if her thoughts were actually happening, which accounted, I think, for her disruptive behavior. But things were better for her now. She was meeting a psychiatrist regularly, once a week, and taking medications. She really doesn't like medication. She doesn't like the side effects, but she's very compliant. And I found that, as I understand it, among people with this kind of difficulty, she was highly functional. She kept her promises. She met her psychiatrist regularly. She took her meds regularly. She was very good at regulating herself. And I found in general, she was highly self-aware. She was very aware of how she appeared to others and how they may be reacting to her. And beyond that, once I sort of got adjusted to the situation, I found that there was quite a bit to her. She had a very lively sense of humor, but there was a sweetness to her. She had a good heart, and I found over time that she also had a very thoughtful nature. She wrote poems which were published in amateur literary magazines. So, in the course of getting to know her, I found this whole other side to her, and it turned out that she's just a person with a certain kind of medical condition. But I also found that she was leading a very difficult life. Aside from her psychiatrist, she had no other meaningful personal relationship. Every day that she woke up, she was faced with the challenge of having to fill all of that empty time. Now, I believe she was legally allowed to hold a job, but no one would hire her. And I think as a result of all that, she was maybe being supported by some organization or something. But in any event, she had no job, no friends, and her family shunned her. And every day she got up, she had to find a way to get through the day. She had to find a reason to get out of the house. So she often went outside to eat, and once she was outside, she would wander around all day. And she did things to fill the time. One thing that I found out was that she won a lot of radio call-in contests. You know, the kind of contest where if you're like the fifth caller or something, they give you a prize. And she had enough time on her hands that she could just kind of wait and then call in time. And she would win those prizes and talk with the person on the phone and get some social contact. The most, I think, poignant thing about her, the thing that most impressed itself on me, was that her illness was actually not the most difficult thing in her life. She was very good at regulating it. The hardest thing in her life was loneliness. Her condition made her ill at times, but it was loneliness that was, in a sense, driving her crazy. And so I would ask her, well, initially I tried to get her to be a volunteer at my temple, and maybe she could join our community. But this was some time back, and the people around her felt uncomfortable around her. And another thing that you should know about her is that she has great pride, and she won't stay where she feels unwelcome. I asked if she would join a community of people who were facing the same difficulties as herself, but she didn't want to live in a place like that. She dreamed of leading a normal life, the normal life that was denied to her. Her biggest dream is to get married. And that's what she talked about all the time. And sometimes she imagined that she was in love with her psychiatrist. So this is the situation that I found myself in with her. And I had the strangest karma with her. I would run into her at the oddest times in the most unexpected places. I'm sorry and ashamed to say that when I would turn around to see her, what I saw first was her illness. I would see this woman looking at me with, these very strong eyes and this, not entirely socially appropriate appearance. And then finally I would see her. And then she would be smiling and we might share a cup of coffee or spend a little time talking with each other. And over the years, every once in a while, she looks at me, out of the corner of her eye, and she goes, Sunim, I'm a tough old broad. And I'll say, yeah, you really are. And that's the truth. She is one of the toughest, bravest, and good-hearted people that I've ever met. And I've shared this story with you, first of all, because I believe her story deserves to be shared, but also to sort of show, her story shows how serious a struggle with loneliness is. The struggle to endure and overcome loneliness can be of desperate and even heroic proportions. So this is something that I think that her story, that we can learn very quickly and intuitively through her story. Now, what I would like to do next is share with you a few statistical facts about loneliness to give us an overview, now that we've seen what it's like to really live with real loneliness. First of all, loneliness is very loosely and simply defined these days as simply being in a state where you don't have as many meaningful, close personal relationships as you'd like, or the relationships that you have aren't as close as you want them to be. Loneliness is generally defined as a kind of social pain, a signal that tells you that you need to get more socially connected with people. Now, in the United States alone, 60 million people report that they are lonely. That's 20% of the entire American population. 1 out of 5 Americans will report that they are lonely. Both the General Social Survey and the American Sociological Review report that between 1985 and 2004, in those 20 years, the number of confidants, a confidant is anyone that you can share, you can talk about important things with. The number of confidants that the average American had decreased from 3 to 2. Other studies have estimated that maybe as many as 12% of Americans don't have any confidants at all, and 19% of Americans may only have one. In those cases, the confidant is often the spouse, and this is considered to put great pressure on the marriage, because if there's any trouble in the marriage, even temporary, one or both spouses are left without any confidants at all. Now, I find these statistics amazing. It just doesn't really seem possible that so many people can be lonely. But when you consider that most people, when they're lonely, or very many people when they're lonely, hide their loneliness. They hide behind a very well-practiced smile and shrug. So it's very hard to say who's really lonely and who's not. What's even more disturbing than all of this are the medical implications of loneliness. Medically speaking, loneliness is now considered a serious, life-threatening health condition. We don't know really why. Maybe it adds stress, or maybe it somehow affects the immune system. But it's been found that chronic loneliness, meaning a near constant state of loneliness, increases the risk for getting cancer, especially for people who try to hide their loneliness from the outside world. Chronic loneliness also increases the risk of getting a stroke or cardiovascular disease. The one that I think is most surprising is in a 1988 journal, Science study. It was found, there was a study done on the medical effects of social isolation, and it was found that chronic loneliness is a more dangerous risk factor for disease and death than smoking. So I think we can see from all this that loneliness is not something that simply affects the quality of our lives. It is actually a serious health problem, and one that deserves very, very serious scrutiny. Now, okay, what I'd like to do now is, why don't we take a short break, and when we get back, we'll discuss what possibility there is for Sun meditation and Sun Buddhism to address the issue of loneliness. Hello again. Now, before addressing how Sun meditation practices and teachings may address the problem of chronic loneliness, I'd first like to touch on certain assumptions that many people seem to have about the nature of loneliness, about how it connects to our existence. Now, the first of these assumptions is this idea that I hear once in a while, that loneliness, aloneness, is this kind of unchangeable fixture in the human condition. It's just the way things are. Physically, we're born alone, we live alone, we die alone. There's nothing we can do about it. We just have to put up with it. So that's the first idea. And this encourages to believe that loneliness is something that we shouldn't try to address, that it just has to be sort of endured. The second idea is similar, and that's the idea that no one can ever really know another person. No matter how much information you exchange, no matter how much time you spend together, no matter how close your relationship may seem to be, our most fundamental basic quality of our inner life, the way we experience life, the intrinsic quality of our consciousness, can't really be conveyed to another person. We can never really know what it's like inside of another person. They can never really know what it's like inside me. In other words, we can never really know what it's like to be another person, and therefore another person can never really understand the most important part of me, the part of me that cannot be put into words or expressed in gestures, the part of me that cannot be pulled out of myself for another person to see. So these are two assumptions that many of us hold unconsciously or consciously. And they seem to be unalterable facts of existence. And what I would like to ask all of you today is to enter into meditation once again. So hold the posture, engage the breathing, and in coordination with the breathing, inhale, hold, and as we exhale, imoko. And as we enter into Sun meditation, I will ask that let's put those assumptions down for a moment. Let's let go of them and just enter into a clear state of consciousness without any kind of assumptions or opinions, and consider now what Sun Master Songdam specifically and the Sun Buddhist tradition have to say on these issues. In his Dharma speeches, Sun Master Songdam teaches us that at very heightened levels of practice, an expert meditator can be sitting in the dark, in the mountains, all by himself or herself, and they won't feel any loneliness or any fear. They'll be perfectly fine. So the short answer to the question of what sun meditation can do for loneliness is that it actually can overcome it and eradicate it. Strictly speaking, from the Buddhist point of view, loneliness is simply a negative mental state that sun meditation eventually purifies and cleanses and eliminates completely. So the short answer is that if we make a very serious attempt to gain enlightenment through total commitment to sun meditative practice, then loneliness will just simply be taken care of in the course of that practice. So that's something that I would like to consider on the level of hope, that we can hope for an end to loneliness. But nonetheless, all of us gathered here are beginning meditators. So what can we as beginning meditators do about whatever loneliness we may be feeling? And in this respect, I would like to ask you once again to approach the topic of loneliness from our meditative state. Continue to breathe and meditate, and let's use the heightened clarity of our meditative consciousness to consider what loneliness really is as an emotional experience. Most people seem to think of loneliness as a kind of sadness, and they connect it to depression. Now, this kind of makes sense because sadness is considered the emotional response to any experience of loss. So when we experience losing something or someone that we love, it's the natural thing to grieve. Grief is the response to loss. And it's kind of understandable to think that in loneliness we may be grieving the absence of something that we love or want to love. So that all makes sense, but I'd like to draw your attention to another side of loneliness that doesn't seem to get as much attention. Loneliness, I believe, is also a state of agitation. It's not just a loss of energy. There's also an energy increase. It seems to me to be, a state of anxiety. And I think that maybe this is evolutionarily based. It's said that human beings as a species survived through social cooperation, that we were able to defend ourselves from individually much more powerful predators by learning to work together in organized social effort. So if that's the case, to be disconnected from the tribe, to feel that you are no longer meaningfully connected to other people, means that you're under physical threat in a hostile environment. And so we may be feeling a sense of anxiety, and I believe that this sense of anxiety is experienced in moments of loneliness when people feel like, well, is this always going to be like this? Am I going to grow old and no one's going to take care of me and no one will care what happens to me and I'll just die alone? And these are the moments of fear that that can permeate our loneliness. So there are I believe two sort of emotional experiences going on in our experience of loneliness. And this is something that we want to be aware of when we address whatever loneliness we may be feeling in the present moment through our present meditation. Now, when we want to take on something like loneliness through meditation, what we need to remember is that loneliness fundamentally, as an emotional experience, is a response to a thought, the thought that I am alone, I am lonely, I am uncared for or unloved. And then there is a series of mental and emotional reactions to that thought as if it's totally true. What's relevant for us is that through our breathing practice and our Hwadu practice, we can learn to redirect our attention away from these negative thoughts and emotions and back to our imoko Hwadu. And when we do that, we immediately sever the chain of unpleasant mental and emotional reactions that occur in loneliness. we are able to give ourselves, we are able to sever the stream of loneliness and give ourselves, return ourselves to a state of balance and clarity. So in that sense, meditation can be used right away in any moment of suffering loneliness. But I don't want to argue here that a beginning meditator can totally overcome loneliness through meditation. And our feelings of loneliness may be justified. We really may need to develop more personal relationships. So what can we do on that level? Now, what I'd like to say is that there's already really a lot of therapies and books and workshops and support groups dedicated to teaching people skills, social skills for developing meaningful personal relationships or improving the relationships that they already have in the effort to alleviate their loneliness. What I'd like to focus on for today is what are the unique contributions that the Sun Buddhist meditative tradition can give to us in addressing loneliness. The first one I'd like to point out is actually involves social communication. The overwhelming belief right now is that we can overcome loneliness and create meaningful social relationships through dialogue, through social skills, through the creation of durable, authentic, mutually trusting, mutually understanding interpersonal relationships. And as I said, there are a lot of books and resources on this, and I am totally in support of that. The world is only growing more diverse, more complicated, more multicultural, more multi-everything, and I think that we all could really, need to learn how to communicate with each other in a meaningful, nonviolent, and mutually helpful way. So I'm totally in support of that. But what I would like to point out is that in this rush to connect socially through the exchange of words and gestures and images and whatever, that maybe we are learning, or we are forgetting and losing the art of knowing how to connect through shared silence. That there is an idea within Buddhism that silence is not simply this empty void that separates people from one another, this distance that you have to cross to get to another person. In Sun meditative practice, silence is often construed as a powerful medium for achieving closeness and connection with another person. And the reason for this is that in the Sun Buddhist view of the world, in the Buddhist view of the world, we are not isolated physical bodies fated to be born, live, and die alone. And our consciousness is not thoroughly sealed off and insulated against one another so that we're fated to be strangers to one another forever. In the Buddhist view, everything about us, from our bodies to our minds, are formed and exist within an infinitely complex, infinitely large network of relationships. We are fundamentally relational beings. We are connected to each other at the source. These connections already exist. And the reason why we appear to be disconnected from one another is because of negative mental impediments, which the Buddhists call afflictions. And it's one of the purposes of meditation is to remove these afflictions. So from the Buddhist point of view, through practice, we remove barriers to the connections that already exist. And what you actually find, and this is something that anyone who has lived in a meditation community can tell you, is that what you find is in meditation, within the clarity and stillness of meditation, you will find at times that another person is simply reflected within your own mind and heart, that their presence is felt immediately within your own mind without social communication. This is considered within the Sun meditation the most profound way to make connection, especially between teachers and their disciples. If you practice under an authentic master, one thing that you realize is the greatest part of the master's teaching, of his or her teaching, is not conveyed in words or doctrines. It is conveyed through their presence, through their silent presence, and in the relationship you form with one another without the aid of words or other social constructs. So within the Sun meditative context, we're invited to consider that silence may be one of the best ways to get to one another. So this is something I believe that the Sun meditative tradition can offer to us. And I will suggest that if you are interested in pursuing meditation more deeply, that you find yourself a meditation community that you feel well connected to. And of course, everyone is welcome to join the community at Hwansan in Incheon. But whatever works for you, and also I'll caution you that not every meditation community lives up to its reputation. But it's not an easy thing to meditate on your own in modern society. It is very helpful to join a meditation community and meet others of like mind. So that's something that I would like to say to you. And I will add that regardless of what your religion is and whether you have interest in Buddhism or not, I do believe that the meditation tradition of Sun Buddhism needs to be preserved and transmitted. It is something of tremendous value to us because it continues to store all of these valuable teachings on what human beings are capable of. So I will make a note of that. And the final thing I'd like to say is that, well, maybe I don't want to join a meditative community. Maybe I don't want to join a religion. And maybe I'm not really that into meditation. So then now what can Sun Buddhism or Buddhism in general offer to me in addressing loneliness? And on that level, I would like to say that the most basic Mahayana Buddhist teaching on suffering actually, I believe, addresses this. Whether we like it or not, whether we understand the reasons for it or not, we are presented with the fact of suffering in human life. And we need to learn, we're going to have to find a way to respond to it. According to Mahayana Buddhists, the wisest, most helpful, most pain alleviating response to suffering is to use it as the occasion to arouse compassion and love for all other living beings. That sounds paradoxical, but the idea here is that if I know that I want my suffering to end, if I know that I want to achieve happiness, then basically I know the most important thing about every living being in the world. I will know that that person or that creature does not want to be cold or hungry or sick or abused, that it or he or she wants to be treated with love and understanding and respect and to enjoy peace and safety and abundance. So our suffering actually potentially opens us up to the world and allows us to bring love and compassion into the world. The reason why this may seem so counterintuitive to many of us is because in our loneliness, we so often feel that the loneliness will be cured by receiving love. And there is no question that receiving love is incredibly important in human development. Maybe it's the most important thing in human development. But I will argue that no matter how much love you receive, loneliness will not be overcome. We must learn how to love. The reason why is very simple. If you are completely intent only on receiving love, that automatically means that you are looking to yourself and not to others. The direction of your gaze cuts you off from others, and you will always feel a distance no matter how much love you're given, a void, a lack. Now, this is not necessarily an issue of religion or even spirituality. In my view, it's simply common sense. If the world is filled with people who only want to take, then no matter how much natural resources there will always be a sense of never being enough. People will be in competition and will always seem like there are never enough to go around. If, on the other hand, the world is filled with people who want to give, then there will be abundance. So if you take that line of reasoning and go a step further, if the world is filled with people who only want to receive love, and they're not so concerned about giving it, then it will always feel like there's not enough love to go around, and the world will feel like a cold and lonely place. But if the world were to be filled with people who are interested in giving love and compassion, then suddenly it's literally a world of love. So the answer on the broad scale, on the commonsensical scale, without even bringing in issues of religion, is simply that the cure to this widespread loneliness is to give love for all of us, as many of us, to take hold of our suffering and use it as the occasion for giving both love and compassion to as many people and living beings as we possibly can. So these, I believe, are the teachings and gifts that Sun Buddhism has to offer in addressing the problem, this very serious problem of widespread loneliness. So I will ask you to consider it and to experiment with it, especially the use of meditation, how it affects our levels of loneliness, and to consider what we may be capable of doing in response to whatever loneliness that we may be feeling. Okay, so I think that that's as much time as we have today. So once again, I would like to close this program with a closing session of meditation. And I hope that you come back for our next episode and we can go deeper into our practice and learning of meditation. Okay, I will close now with the traditional Buddhist greeting. May we all attain the Buddha. Thank you. And with 3 strikes of this bamboo clapper, we will begin our closing meditation.